My watch says it's 12:30, so I'm going to turn this volume down on this other device I have. And I just want to let you know this is Bill Murphy with ASP Enterprises, Quick Supply Company, and Bowman Construction Supply in Colorado. And I'm excited to be joined by, oops, I should not have that pop up. I'm supposed to close all other programs. I'm excited to be joined by Matt Welch with Profile Products. And I'm going to introduce Matt, but first, some few orders of business. This is our fourth webinar, and we're going to cover our profile products, the 5 fundamentals. And before we get into that, I want to let you know that we ask you to use the Q&A, and that'll ask questions of the panelists. We'll try to get to those at the end of our presentation. We're going to be done by 1:30, so we're going to try to be wrapping up our presentation by about 1:20, so we have time for Q&A. And Matt and I will be our co-hosts on this, and once I get done with our intro, I'll turn it over to Matt from Profile Products. And we already have this recording, so if you know of anybody that couldn't join us today, we will make it available, and everyone who attends the full presentation will get 1 PDH. And this is really just an introductory presentation. We can go more in depth with the research and data, but we want to make sure that you feel comfortable reaching out to us, and we can set up a presentation like this just with you and your coworkers in the comfort of your home, or if some of you are getting back to your office, we can do that. We won't be able to meet in person for a while yet, but we're doing a lot of lounge and learns, as we call them. And once we get freed up to travel, we'll be able to have our ASP, Quick Supply, and Bowman reps meet with you at your office. So please use this as an opportunity to learn, spark some of your own interests, share some ideas. We're going to try to powerfully land a small number of big ideas in this 1-hour period. Matt, when I introduce you, I have a joke I want to tell you, or not a joke, actually a funny story. But first, let me say, being joined by Matt Welch from Profile Products, and I need to close this thing that's making some noise. And Matt's the CPES, CESSWI. He's the manager for their erosion control products, but bigger than that, he's their technical service and business development manager. And he has been with Profile for however many years he'll tell you. I don't want to give away everything in his bio. He's got an impressive bio, I can tell you. I'm looking at it right now. But like what I do for ASP, Quick, and Bowman, Matt works closely with specifiers to ensure that all erosion and sediment control plans involving Profile's line of products have a high rate of success. Your success is our success. Matt has a Bachelor's of Science degree in Conservation and Environmental Services from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, with an emphasis on land resources and soil science. So you can imagine what team he's a fan of as I get into this next part. During and after college, Matt worked at an engineering and consulting firm out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. The firm he worked with was heavily involved in projects with erosion and reclamation of land, and many of which were on linear transmission line projects. This experience ultimately led to a smooth transition into the next page on my phone, the technical department at Profile Products. Welch is also a member of the International Erosion Control Association, where he is a member of the PDC, the Professional Development Committee, and I'm a member of that with him, so we get to work together quite a bit. And he is the current president of the Great Lakes chapter of the IECA, and I'm proud of him, and I'm proud to introduce him as a friend. With that, Matt, you can go ahead and free up your mic. I'm going to let you hang in there while I do the company intro and tell what I think is a very funny story.
Sounds good.
See, do I have control now? There you go. I went a little too fast. So ASP, Quick, and Bowman have been around for actually over 50 years. This slide says 30 years. We do have 8 offices and warehouses in Kansas City, St. Louis, Wichita, Omaha, Denver, Longmont, Colorado Springs. I'm in our Des Moines office at Quick Supply Company right now, social distancing. I'm in a lone office in a warehouse with no one near me, and I generally work from home during this last several weeks. We have several CPES on staff, and I am the civil engineer PE for all 3 companies across all those great states shown on the map and beyond. We have a lot of friends and peers that do what we do, that we get to interact with across the country. And we have over 20 sales professionals that provide not only specification assistance and support, but relationships. We, like everybody says that, it's kind of overused, but we are definitely about relationships. And we actually have over 9,000 customers now. I need to update my slides. The websites that you see listed on this, they're available on all of our contact information. They all basically point to the same parent site, but each of our companies has some unique things that we do differently from each other, while there is a lot of overlap in the construction supply business. Some of our sites are blessed with a nice big showroom. For those of you who haven't been to our Kansas City location, that's what's pictured in the top center here. A lot of our sites have some outdoor displays for those that have hardscapes, and we have an amazing fleet of trucks, big and small trucks, a lot of drivers and warehouse staff. We've been blessed to keep all of them on full time. We've had them work half shifts where somebody has a week off while the other half has the week in the office. And we've been trying to keep everybody healthy that way. I'm proud to say we've done a very great job of keeping COVID-19 out of our company and out of our company's families. We're all about family as well. So we have all the materials you're going to need for your construction projects on site, in stock, and if we don't, we can get them really quickly. We will not allow any delays to hold up your project. Just like Profile says, your success is our success. In addition to all the commodities that keep the lights on and keep us busy every day of the year, we have a lot of engineered products, and that's where I come in. I work with our engineered products, especially in stormwater. So we've done presentations on low impact development and green infrastructure. I love working with designers up front, kicking around ideas, coming up with some what if scenarios and creating budgets for those designs, and then working through the review agencies. We have a lot of friends in cities, counties, and states across the center of the country that are counting on us to help them stay ahead with innovation. I say we are at the tip of the spear. There's a whole lot of people I get to deal with every day that it's their first time designing one of our solutions or installing them. We're very friendly with contractors. They're ultimately who our customers are. While engineers and landscape architects specify our products and all those government agencies approve them, and they also specify them for their public projects, it's ultimately the contractors that order from us and that we coordinate shipping with. And we even work through pre-cons, and we help be on site with our guys to make sure that everything's getting installed right, all the way through to maintenance at the end. That's a big part of making sure that we have sustainable solutions and sustainable projects. We're about 6 or 7 minutes into this. That's a little longer than I wanted to go. So before I get to Matt, I already cheated and bounced one ahead. Matt, I have good news during this quarantine. Told my wife yesterday was my birthday, and I got some great news. We're going to come into some money. A crown prince from a company or a country I've never heard of and can't pronounce sent me an email and said that I've been chosen to get a whole bunch of money. All I got to do is send him a little bit of money, and in several weeks, I'm going to get a big check, and I'm going to be wealthy. So it's going to be exciting. Stay tuned for that.
Sounds like a very
Matt.
Thanks, Bill. That sounds like a solid investment you're looking into. And let me know how that turns out.
All right.
Well, very good. Well, thanks everyone for your time today and jumping on this webinar. We hope everyone's staying safe and healthy. Obviously, if you can, stay at home, listen to Fauci here, the good doctor on the national spotlight. And if you can't stay home, make sure you're washing your hands. Use plenty of that that hand sanitizer that apparently is going for quite a bit of money these days. So if you can, stay safe at any cost and keep your families and coworkers and businesses all healthy. So with that, I'm going to give you a brief introduction today on Profile products. Give you a little information on hydroseeding and its practice around the world. And then we're going to really dive into the 5 fundamentals. And really these fundamentals are all about eliminating variables that often affect the success when revegetating our construction project sites. So with that, we'll dive into a case history after and then open it up to question and answers. So in an attempt to remain, back and forth with our audience, we're going to ask you to go to polev.com. Open up another browser if at all possible. So polev.com, and then the code you will enter once you're on that site is Profile P138. So again, polev.com. We're going to have a few polls throughout this presentation just to keep the back and forth a little active with the audience here and not be talking at you quite as much as other presentations I've given. So with that, we'll open up the first poll question. So with that, which of the following best describes your professional background? Are you an engineer? Are you an architect, a designer, contractor, inspector, or other? Again, which of the following best describes your professional background? Are you an architect, engineer, designer, contractor, inspector, other? So that question is open. So feel free to chime in with your responses. We'll give you a little bit of time here on this one. Just making sure.
Matt, that's the Profile P138, right? When you get into that website?
Correct. Yep. So polev.com/profile P138. And we'll ask that you go to the website first and foremost. You can text in, but the next question will require a web browser. So let's give it a little bit of time here, another minute or so to get you set up on that website. and hopefully we'll see some good responses trickling in.
I'm excited about this.
Yeah, yeah. It's otherwise it gets pretty boring just hearing the same person talk about, it's a slideshow for.
Well, we love new technology, so it's fun to see who's out there and get people involved.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, Matt, while you're waiting for that, if I click on Q&A, does it mess you up or take away controls?
You go ahead and try it, and if it.
Okay. I'm in it now, and a guy named Rick Van Fleet said he doesn't see anything, but he could hear me. So hopefully he can see now.
Okay. You can see the screen, right, Bill?
Oh yeah, it's looking great.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we can see the results continuing to trickle in. Here we have 7 seconds left, down to the final buzzer. Anyone with the last second shot? All right, and that poll is closed. So it looks like 72% are engineers, 11% architects, 6% contractors, and 11% other. I would probably fit in that other myself, being a soil science background, but I guess I could fall into inspector and designer. So many of us are wearing a lot of different hats that coming up with one answer is often a little bit difficult. But nonetheless, we will move on to our next poll question, and that is, where are you located? So if you have that web browser open, that should automatically populate, and you can start dropping pins, and we can see where our audience is live. So a pretty cool new innovation. So you can make it as specific to the state you want. You can zoom in, zoom out, and really.
And if you don't like where you clicked it or you accidentally clicked it, you can clear that response, and then you can redo it. That's down towards the bottom. It says clear last response.
Fantastic.
I put myself in Florida just to see if it worked.
You wish. You wish. I hear about a lot of people on the Florida beaches, and people aren't too happy about it.
Okay, I cleared the response. I'll go back home.
There you go. You better. All right, 9 seconds left. So it looks like we have a good focus here. Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, a good concentration. So yeah, that's where we'd expect with given your location, right, Bill? I mean,
right.
Fantastic. So I am located in another Midwest state, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, just south of Milwaukee. And our headquarters for corporate is just north of Chicago, Illinois. So I catch a lot of grief from the Bears fans that I go and see, but we make it as fun as possible. So we're in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, a northwest suburb with 4 manufacturing facilities across the United States: North Carolina, Tennessee, Mississippi, and recently added Washington State. We have projects and distribution in over 90 countries, so a worldwide focus. And we have engineers, architects, agronomists, soil scientists, a wide variety of backgrounds on our team. So any questions you're running into, we likely have a professional that can help address it with you. We are an industry leader in research and development for erosion control and the standardization efforts through ASTM International. We are currently updating a few standards, as well as creating several completely new standards through ASTM. So very exciting things to be working on. Profile has a strong environmental legacy that's really a focus. Erosion and sediment control is more than just putting down products that'll hold soil in place. We're looking to really improve our environment. And what we manufacture a majority of our products with is recycled wood, fiber, and paper fiber. So ultimately, we're removing that from our waste stream and incorporating it back into nature, into the soil, where it will be stored and sequestering carbon longer term. We estimate that 1.5 million acres have been restored using our products, with 125 million tons of sediment being saved from entering our waterways. And these are all very safe numbers, just that factor of safety built into our estimates, as always. But then 100 million tons of carbon sequestered. That's through, incorporating these carbon-based, carbon-rich products back into the soil, as well as establishing vegetation. So vegetation is a great carbon sink that only helps any type of global climate change issues we're running into. Oops, skip back one. So we have a few areas of focus in our company. Erosion and vegetation solutions is what we're going to really focus on today. We also manufacture a clay particle that's used in skin id fields. I believe it's 23 is the current number of MLB fields we're incorporated on with our technology. So making it smooth sliding surfaces for all the baseball players. And then those same clay particles are actually incorporated into golf greens as a replacement of peat moss. Next, we incorporate our wood and bark fibers into horticulture growing mediums. So if there's a chance you're buying any plants out this spring and getting ready, all your flower beds and things like that ready for the summer, there's a good chance that you're going to be incorporating some of our materials into your flower beds as well. So with that, we opened up the poll a little early, but nonetheless, feel free to chime in now. What is your level of experience with hydraulically applied erosion control products? Are you very familiar with them, or really not so much whatsoever? So we typically see a good mix of this, and it's really hit or miss depending on where in the country we are.
What's really cool with this, Matt, is I've never used Poll Everywhere until you introduced me to it this week. If you get on the website and do what you're saying, or through an app on your phone like I'm doing, once you're in there, it automatically loads to the next one once you start it up. So that's pretty cool. Like you said, you don't have to do anything. You just wait and it pops up, and then you tap
just keep that, absolutely, just keep that window open. Well, it looks like we got 15 and 15 right now. Perfect. Any tiebreakers coming in?
I love it.
That's good.
So did it mess you up when I went to Q&A?
No, not at all.
Excellent.
All right, so the results are in. It is a 50-50 blend with hydraulically applied erosion control products experience. So, half the group, it seems, are familiar with these new technologies. The other half are not. So with that, we will go into a high-level overview of what is hydroseeding. So here we have on the right a Fin T330. That is a 3,000-gallon hydroseeding machine. Basically, you mix water, seed, fertilizer, soil amendments, and hydraulic mulch in that tank. It has paddle agitation. It forms a homogeneous slurry, and that slurry is applied through a tower or through a hose application. It's an extremely effective way to stabilize your soil and vegetate your projects. So that is my one slide on Hydroseeding 101. But with that, I didn't make this a poll question because I cry myself to sleep every time I ask, because no one gets it right, but I think this group would have. What is the most cost-effective form of erosion control? We always say sustainable vegetation. So that's not just vegetation. That's not just your quick flush of, your annual cover crop species. This is vegetation that once is established will sustain itself through natural cycles, whether it's the carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, or organic matter cycle. It is a self-sustaining soil plant ecosystem. What you need for that type of sustainable vegetation to occur and proliferate is healthy soil. So how can you tell if your soil's healthy? Can you see if it has the right minerals? Does it have enough organic matter? What if there's a salt issue or a pH imbalance? You typically can't see that information. So ultimately what we're going to recommend is test your soil. I'll dive into this a little later, but we believe so deeply in testing your soil that we actually offer completely free soil testing. All you have to do is pay for shipping. And luckily for you in this region, the third-party lab that we test in is in Lincoln, Nebraska. So it should be a pretty quick shipping, pretty low-cost shipping endeavor to move those samples to the lab. So the next question we have, do you routinely conduct soil testing for agronomic potential when designing or working on a project? Yes, A, no, B. So one more time, do you routinely conduct soil testing for agronomic potential when designing or working on a project? All right.
Do we have to answer honestly, or do you want us to say what we think you want to hear?
Let's answer honestly, because that's the only thing that really matters.
Okay.
So we got 20 seconds. It looks like we got 33 responses already, which is more than the last question. So fantastic. People are taking part here.
Well, some of us are just learning as we go, so that's pretty good. That means the learning curve's picking up.
That's right.
Participating people. We've got 34 out of the 74 attendees that are answering. Some might be trying, and some might be driving.
Right, there you go. Yeah, that gets tricky. Don't text and drive.
All right, right on.
Very good. Well, yeah, so this is pretty much on par with what we get. A lot of times when we're doing large webinars, a lot of our distributors come on. I think they may skew the numbers and say, I test every time, and that may skew the numbers. Typically, we see about 75-25, but right here we have about 94% saying no, with 6% saying yes. And the biggest thing I want you to take away about soil testing for agronomic potential is I talk to a wide variety of engineers all the time. And I say, if you're putting up a structure or if you're putting in a roadway, do you test your soils for geotechnical stability? And they say, absolutely. And well, what's the reasoning behind that? Well, we want the structure to last a long time, and we want to make sure we have a stable geotechnical foundation prior to making that huge investment in that structure. And really, it's the same basis for getting an agronomic soil test. We need a solid foundation to support vegetation long-term prior to making the costly investment of revegetating that site.
Well,
and
Matt,
making
I hate treading over you. That's just rude. It's fun if we have banter, but I didn't mean to interrupt you. But I see a structural engineer friend of mine on here named Dean Walkup, and he'll tell you, if you don't have a good foundation, don't invest any money in a structure above it. So I love that you're saying that from an engineering perspective, that you got to have a good foundation before you do all the important work above it. Good job.
Absolutely, absolutely. It just makes so much sense to get your soil tested up front. So creating optimal soil conditions, one of the favorite quotes I've ever heard regarding soil and its agronomic potential is ultimately, if you're a doctor and you create a bunch of prescriptions and you really haven't diagnosed any issues, that's called malpractice. So a prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. So many specifications I see are just based on, what we've done in the past. We put out 2 tons of agricultural limestone for no real reason. We think it might be acidic, but really without that soil test confirming what you think, you may be doing more harm than good on your site. So we're evaluating our fertility, providing a basis for amendments, and ultimately we're able to select proper plant species for your site. What it all comes down to is being able to predict the probability of your desired outcome. So what are the odds of us achieving that outcome that we really want to? And without the soil test, you're going to have a very difficult time predicting that probability. So with that, we can offer free soil testing to you. It's a very in-depth analysis, and they're available through profileps3.com. So feel free to go log into the website. It's absolutely free for you to use, and you can get that soil tested and just do your due diligence prior to making any applications of erosion control materials or revegetation materials. So what do we test for? Here's a list of some of the macro, micronutrients, salts, pH levels, a wide variety of things that we test for through our third-party lab and ultimately give you results on. So here's a quick peek at the results page that we typically offer through our website. And again, it's a very in-depth analysis. It's not just your NPK, your organic matter. It is diving into micronutrient, macronutrient details that are typically not offered through typical agronomic soil testing laboratories. So very in-depth analysis. We can provide you that basis for recommendations. And once we get those analyses, we can ultimately come up with those recommendations. So without the diagnosis, we cannot make recommendations. And these are a quick look at some high-level recommendations that are typically offered on a variety of different sites. So you don't need to know everything about your soils. You can have a little cheat sheet here printed on your desk. Every time you get your soil results, do my soils basically end up in this optimal range or not? So this is from our Profiles Soil Testing and Interpretation Guide. It'll tell you where you're deficient in values. It'll tell you where you're high and maybe have toxicity issues you need to worry about. But ultimately a very in-depth guide as to where you should be in your soil testing, as opposed to, your ideal soils. Next, how do we fix poor soil? So we got the results. How do we fix them? The most common one I see on any of our erosion control plans is typically your fertilizer. You're going to be applying that anytime you put down seed. And there's a variety of fertilizers. There's quick release synthetic formulations, but also slower release formulations as well. So you can basically have a coated type of nitrogen source, something to really delay and feed the plants more slowly than offer that direct hit of a synthetic fertilizer. There's also organic and natural formulations that I typically prefer on most of the sites I work. So again, you can go into as much depth as you'd like to on your fertilizers, soil neutralizers, chemistry 101. Your pH of your soil is going to be anywhere from a 0 to a 14. We want to be right in that neutral zone. Right around 6 to 7 is typically deemed ideal. So how do we get there? Adding different amendments to adjust the pH and really make it a friendly growing environment for your plants. Next, increasing organic matter on a lot of our construction soils is vital to the success on our sites. Some of the historically relevant organic matter additives are going to be compost, manure, peat, a wide variety of things you can add in that sense. Also just incorporating what we term as topsoil. So there's a lot of loose descriptions of topsoil out there, and really honing in to make sure your topsoil is actually productive topsoil is something you should be doing on a regular basis. A newer product to hit the market is called a biotic soil media, a biotic soil technology, or a hydraulic biotic growth medium. In the erosion control industry, we really love our acronyms, so we have to make an acronym for everything. Then we look to growth stimulators and enhancer. How do we achieve vegetation quickly to get that notice of termination on our sites, but also how do we extend the longevity of that vegetation by sustaining those plants long term? All right, so what does a typical soil profile look like? Typically, we're most worried about our organic and A horizons. OA horizons are typically what we deem as topsoil, and those are really composed of about 45% mineral material, which most of our sites will have, and then about 50% airspace and water space, even combination between the two. What's often missing on our sites is going to be that 5% organic matter that really makes a topsoil a productive topsoil. It's everything, it's the lifeblood of your topsoil. So typical construction site profiles are going to look something like this. You strip off the topsoil, it either gets stockpiled for a bit or it gets sold off and moved to a different project that the general contractor is working on. And ultimately, we can run into some serious issues with these lower soil horizons when we try to revegetate them. That organic topsoil layer took a long time to develop, and it is necessary for those plants ultimately to thrive long term. So not only are we working with BC horizons, sometimes we're working with mine wastes, industrial waste, and coal combustion residuals, CCR on your power plants, and some of the ponds, settling ponds, things like that. So a wide variety of issues we can run into on our construction sites. So again, now we need to increase that organic matter content in your soil. Topsoil, stockpiled topsoil is a very common BMP, but again, once you stockpile it, how biologically active is that topsoil towards the bottom of that stockpile? It typically becomes anaerobic relatively quickly, and a lot of the beneficial constituents really die off quickly on those stockpiles of topsoil. Next, compost. There's a pneumatic compost blower. You can see it's being applied through that hose, and typically compost is going to be applied anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, so relatively high rates. Quite a few of those truckloads would be necessary to cover your site. Next, peat, manure, biosolids, your typical solutions that you've seen time and time again in the history of revegetation on construction sites. Now we have a hydraulically applied biotic soil media. So hydraulically applied, 2 or 3 of those tank loads, those 3,000 gallon machines, can typically cover an acre. So rather than having 20 truckloads of this bulk material hauled in, dropped off onto your site, you can apply it hydraulically very quickly and cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time. It can be applied onto slopes. So typically hauling bulk materials up a slope and making it stay in place gets pretty tricky. Installation time is decreased, and site safety is improved drastically by just having much less vehicular traffic on your site. Ultimately, we've been able to achieve just as good of vegetation performance on these type of solutions, and oftentimes we're actually seeing improved vegetation establishment on these sites because there are so many variabilities in your topsoil and compost that are being applied onto our sites. So I'm not going to dive into this in particular, but the slide is available for you. This is a little bit of an eye chart, but nonetheless, we wanted to dive into details and make this available to you as to what the beneficial constituents of Proganics are. There are organic materials that are going to break down slower. There are growth stimulators that are going to make sure vegetation comes out of the ground very quickly. And there's also biological inoculants, and which really leads me to how the soil food web works and how Proganics works. Really what we're doing is we're introducing some of those first trophic levels of the soil food web. So Again, in our seed blend, we are introducing plants. We have organic materials, the bark and wood fiber, and we have bacterial and fungal inoculants. So really the building blocks of a healthy soil are all in place, and the other portions will fill in. So just as proof that the other portions will fill in, here's a quick video of a grizzly bear rolling in Proganics. So the highest trophic level made an appearance shortly after an application. This is on a mine site in Alberta. They jumped back in their Hydroseeder to take videos and pictures. Obviously, a pretty crazy example.
That's crazy.
But nonetheless, yeah, they would. I had to show that on.
I got a couple bear jokes. One's inappropriate, one's clean, but we don't have time today. I'll tell you later.
There we go. I need to hear those. But yeah, yeah. If Proganics, you don't want to use it as a revegetation tool, you can always use it as a bear attractant. Is my takeaway here. So ASTM 5268 is the topsoil spec through ASTM International, and it's topsoil used for landscaping and construction purposes. So use this specification as your forefront for specifying topsoil. If the topsoil doesn't meet these specification standards, this new technology, an engineered soil amendment, is approved as an equivalent alternative to topsoil. So that Proganics BSM meets that specification if your topsoil on your sites are not as good as deemed necessary through ASTM International. Alternatives to regenerating soil, I'm not going to dive into this, but there are so many advantages to these new technologies that are going to save you time, money, and a lot of headaches down the road in compared to some of the more historically relevant regeneration soil products. So biotic soil media, again, checks all of those boxes. Wet frozen conditions, renewable sources, increased concentrated organic matter, steep slope applications, all that we went through. It's just a great product all around to apply and to think about when you're improving your vitality of your soils. All right, fundamental number one took a little longer, but fundamental number two we should breeze through pretty quickly. A few high-level notes I really want to dive into. Picking the right plant species is so important. It's often, taken for granted. You just use whatever specs have been used time and time again. But a few things to consider when you're writing your next specification. What are we trying to get on this site? Is it a permanent or temporary stabilization technique? When will the installation occur? Seasonality is a big thing in the Midwest. Changing your seed blends for seasonality is critical. Intended application. Is it a slope channel? Is the soil going to be saturated for long periods of time? All things you need to consider. And then a big one I do want to point out as well, maintenance activities. I've seen people specify native seed mixes and then also specify that it needs to be mowed to a height of about 2 inches, which a lot of the native species that they paid big bucks for ultimately didn't do too well with that mowing technique that was ultimately specified. Another one I really want to point out is choosing the right ratio of your cover crops to your permanent grass is important. So ultimately, I think on this site, we would like everything to look a little more like in the foreground here. You can see a little green grass showing. Ultimately, they over-applied a cover crop here, and that is going to shade out so many of those permanent grasses that would have established otherwise. So ultimately, a cover crop is supposed to stabilize the soil quickly and not block out and shade out too many other species, as that is really the long-term erosion control that's needed. Showing the seasonality that can be critical. Here's a fall-winter mix that they basically seeded in spring-summer, and then they wanted to use up their fall-winter mix before switching to that spring-summer mix, even though the specifications called for something different. It can be such a drastic difference in your success. Getting a full stand of vegetation versus a poor stand of vegetation is really dictated often by your seeding window and the time that you seed and the mix that you're utilizing. All right, so fundamental number 3, select the proper erosion control material for your site. Very important. And what I like to say here, this is the green design engineering triangle, as what Profile trademarked it. And ultimately, it's all about balancing your natural variables. So your natural variables being soil, water, and vegetation, and maximizing those variables with your product attributes. So a product can be judged by its erosion control effectiveness, how effective it is at controlling erosion, functional longevity, how long will that product last on your site, and then growth establishment, how will that product enhance vegetation. So those three characteristics are extremely important. A lot of times when I give these presentations to an engineering group, I'll ask what the best form of erosion control is, as I always do, and I'll get answers anything from a tarp to concrete, which they are absolutely correct. It does a very good job of keeping the soil in place, but nonetheless, we are just moving that water downstream, heating it up, and completely disregarding vegetation on your site. So really it's all about those balances that are going to lead to sustainable vegetation, and oftentimes what we're looking for on our sites. We don't want to concrete over every site that we run into just because it's great erosion control. All right, so hydraulically applied erosion control products. Here's a quick view of Flexterra, our highest performer applied to a soil. It adheres to the soil very, very quickly. It holds a lot of moisture near the seed, so vegetation will thrive and do well and germinate very quickly. Again, this is more of a sprayed on blanket, so we want 100% coverage on our soil. If you see soil, you don't have protected soil. So making sure you get 100% coverage for these high-end erosion control products is absolutely vital to your success. Rolled erosion control products, very commonly used, and there are a lot of manufacturers that now offer biodegradable nettings, which I can't stress enough is such a great innovation, and they need to be used and specified much more often than they do. The rolled erosion control products with the plastic netting, not ideal for a lot of reasons. Mower entanglement, wildlife entanglement, microplastics going into the natural ecosystem is not something we want to be doing. If you saw a plastic bag rolling around, that's a single-use plastic, but so are these. So let's make sure we're using them when needed and looking to other biodegradable solutions if applicable. So how do we select proper erosion control materials? We look to different soil loss equations. So the one we utilize most frequently is the revised universal soil loss equation, or the Russell. And really what we're looking at is the computed soil loss per area unit per time unit. So we typically look at tons of soil lost per acre per year. And the things that greatly affect it are your rainfall factor, and that's dependent on your geography. Where are you located? Your soil erodibility factor, so sand, silt, clay, things that we test for, are typically going to dictate how erosive your soils are. The length of your slope, the steepness of your slope obviously play a role, and then the vegetation or cover factor, and that's what we attribute to our products and vegetated cover. Next, the erosion control practice factor. So how you prepare your slope will affect how erosive your site is. So we typically recommend track walking slopes, so the contours are parallel with the track marks. We do not want to introduce any rills or anything like that by track walking a site the wrong way. So how do we do our testing? Typically, we do testing at two laboratories, Texas Transportation Institute, as well as UWRL, Utah Water Research Laboratory. And here we have some examples of how intense the rainfall should be when we're doing these destructive tests. So you can see the rainfall impact on the left, and you can see the destruction of the product on the right. So you can see some rills forming at the toe of the slope, which is what we want to see when we're testing a product. We want to drive that thing until it breaks. We don't want to just give every product an A, making them all completely equal. We want the high-performing products to shine and the poor-performing products to end up where they likely belong. So here's a quick look at Utah Water Research Laboratory's testing beds. You can see, again, this is the control plot on the right, and you can see some more control plots in the middle and right, as well as a treated site on the left with a hydraulically applied product. So how do we break this down? We break it down into C factors, like I mentioned, but also into percent effectiveness. So your C factor is like a golf score. The lower, the better. So I would probably have a marginal or poor C factor if golf was assimilated to this, but percent effectiveness is really just the inverse and converted to a percentage. So
I was laughing at that. But I was muted, so that's funny.
Good. Yeah, no, it's very true, and that's I'm getting out golfing even less this year, unfortunately. So it's going to be a complete disaster once the courses open back up. So percent effective correlates inversely a little bit with your C factor. So 99% effective, lowest C factor 0.01, and you can correlate that to your potential soil loss, and then again rank your products from best to worst. So we open up another poll question here: which C factor represents the most effective erosion control product? So hopefully everyone kept those poll that website open, that web browser open, and we can review the results here. Which C factor,
a lot of people were paying attention. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is good. So 1.0, 0.5, 0.1, or 0.01. So remember, it's like a golf score.
And you were right on. Oh, don't tell me answer. You're right. You're right on time. It's 1:10, and you're on slide 47. So that's going pretty well. I was hoping you can get the next 30 in 10 minutes.
That's right. That's right. No problem there. All right, well, let's close up this one. It looks like most people got the right answer. We had one response at 0.01. It was a bit of a trick question, maybe hid behind the timer a little bit, but 0.01 again, the lowest option. We had a buzzer beater there.
Yeah.
1.0.
Funny guy.
Yeah, funny. All right, well, let's go to the next slide here. So we look to our natural vegetation being a limitation for our hydraulically applied products. If you want to go and fill in a void area between hard armoring and natural vegetation, there is a spot for reinforced vegetation through turf reinforcement mats, which we're not going to cover today, but again, glad to cover it later. So our highest performing product can be applied on maximum slope gradients of 0.25 horizontal to 1 vertical. We actually stabilize MSE walls, mechanically stabilized earth walls that are completely vertical with this product as well, because it adheres to the soil so well. 99% erosion control effectiveness, will last 18 months on your site, and has 8-time vegetation establishment in compared to a control, with a cure time of 0 to 2 hours. So it instantly forms a bond to your soil. Our next product, ProMatrix, a step down, but very frequently used to replace blankets. Less than 2-to-1 slopes typically is where we'll recommend that cutoff be. Greater than 95% erosion control effectiveness, lasts for 12 months, and 6 times the vegetation establishment compared to that control again. So we offer specifications for free here through erosioncontrolspecs.com. There's also a spec builder, which I'll dive into very shortly here, where you can customize your specifications on the fly and create custom specs in a matter of minutes. Next, ensure proper installation. You can have the absolute best product in the world, and if you do not have it installed properly, you are going to run into issues more likely than not. So making sure we are including comprehensive detailed specifications and design drawings will help to ensure that the contractor knows exactly how you want these products installed. We have tools and calculators that help you find out how much of each material to move into a slurry and to be applied on what amount of area for coverage. We like to recommend different contractors in different regions based on experience as well. So if you have a contractor who's been around for 25 years doing hydraulic applications versus someone who's going to Sunbelt and renting a hydroseeder and trying to learn how to hydroseed on the fly, we'll typically go with the earlier recommendation. So different products look different at different application rates, but ultimately at about 3,500 pounds per acre on flat ground, you're going to see full coverage of your site, which is typically what we want to see if you're going to be specifying a high performance product. Another issue, I mentioned cat tracking, how we like to see those cat marks going perpendicular to the way water leaves your site. It acts as little water bars to really slow the movement of water down your slope, and also increases infiltration on your site. We need to make sure if we're using these practices that we're getting good coverage on those types of slopes. So making sure you have 100% coverage is really vital. If you see soil, it's not protected, is my rule of thumb.
Like I said about that picture on the right, if you were really cold in the winter and you wanted to cuddle up with a blanket, would you want the one on the left or the one on the right? You don't want a holy blanket to keep you warm.
Exactly. I like that analogy. That is fantastic. All right, follow-up inspection and maintenance. I told you, Bill, I'm going to fly through these last fundamentals. So
I'm impressed.
really making sure we're clear on what is acceptable for inspection and maintenance. Who is a qualified professional? So often I see that left to the contractor's, own personal thoughts. There are so many accreditations out there that you can have, whether it's a certified erosion sediment stormwater inspector, a CPESC. There are so many options that you can specify in to make sure that people have those credentials and actually know what they're looking for when they're doing these inspections. Making sure you're requiring initial inspections to make sure the materials are applied appropriately, and then subsequent inspections conducted at the predetermined intervals or rainfall events that will trigger a quicker inspection. So making sure that the sites are in compliance and the monitoring is taking place in regular intervals before anything gets out of hand. So here was a 50-year storm event with a low-performing product 1 hour after the application took place. Obviously, some design issues could have been considered here, and we'll see that in the after inspection. So they installed silt fence at the toe of the slope. They also incorporated some slope interruption devices to decrease the slope length. That'll help with your hydraulic flow as water leaves the site, as well as good application rate. But obviously, getting it taken care of quickly, making sure the problem doesn't progress too far, is vital to the success on your site. So with that, we incorporate all 5 fundamentals at profileps3.com. Again, sign up for completely free. You can get your soil tested for free. You can work through site designs, whether it's slope or channels. You can save project information. You can get a species selection questionnaire filled out, and the possibilities are really endless for how many projects you want to create and what type of information you can gather, and give it a scientific backing on why you're recommending what. Next, incorporating all of this information into a spec can be a little bit tricky. We offer the specification builder through erosioncontrolspecs.com. It's free, fast, and very easy to use. You can create generic specifications or product-specific specifications. We run into that all the time with public bid projects. You can incorporate seed blends, soil amendments, fertilizers, seed mixes, inspection and maintenance requirements, all sorts of different information that you can include very easily rather than just offering up a Word document with a standard spec. You can really customize it to your particular project very easily. So with that, I think we have time for a quick case study. I'm going to dive into one of our oldest case studies.
You're doing great.
Okay, great. We're going to dive into one of our oldest case studies that we have. This is a residential development site that was in foreclosure. This picture was taken in 2014. So again, right when Proganics was being launched, we decided to offer up this product as a solution after a lot of internal research and development went on. But ultimately, acidic soils, I don't know if that pine tree is a BMP or if it just fell in there, but it probably did slow the flow of water to some extent. Nonetheless, I don't think it was sufficient for the site. The contractor kept telling us there's white horse or ghost clay everywhere. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I Googled ghost clay, and all I could find was pictures of Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze making pottery in the 1992 film Ghost. So I don't think this is what he was talking about, but nonetheless, that's all I could find. Ultimately, I think it was just a lighter hue clay that was found on the site pretty regularly. So we get the soil tested. We come up with an amendment plan with corrective amendments to treat the soils how they need to be treated to thrive long term. So the pH was slightly acidic, 4.8 to 5.8. So adding some agricultural lime, adding some fast-acting lime was necessary, and the organic matter was very, very low, 0.9% to 1%. So much lower than we typically would like to be. We come up with a mixture that is needed. And so I love this contractor. They do a great job. They break it down so simply. Rather than saying you need 8 pounds of weeping love grass in your hydroseeder tank, he has a scoop that stays on the top of the hydroseeder, and he weighs it out, and he knows that it's exactly 2 2/3 scoops to reach 8 pounds of weeping love grass, which is needed per each hydroseeder tank load. So breaks it down very simply for all the guys on the machine, very little to confuse. Next, they treated the steep slope areas with ProMatrix. That was 0.85 acres. And the flat areas they treated with blown straw and then tacked it down with tornado tack. So again, selecting your proper erosion control BMPs for your site-specific needs is very important. So here's the amendment being applied on the flatter areas. And here we have it applied on the steeper sloped areas that would be covered with the bonded fiber matrix ProMatrix. There was an end of a cul-de-sac that basically had an overflow area that washed out a bit, but they just went back and treated that with an erosion control blanket, again, because they didn't want to hydroseed and haul out that huge hydroseeder for that small of an area to treat. But 5 weeks after installation, most of the site was looking very good, far exceeding the expectations of the group, and very dense vegetation established. 1 month after that 5 weeks, May 27th, 2015, they got their notice of termination. But how sustainable is this solution is really the question we are left to answer. 1 year later, we went back, 80 inches of rainfall over a 12-month period down in Alabama, and we have a lot more species diversity starting to take place on our site. So some of those other species that were planted, not just the annual crops that are coming up quickly, but we have a lot of the other plants that are coming up. So Serratia lespedeza, weeping lovegrass are starting to dominate the site. You can also see some of the detritus, the dead plant material that are falling between the actively growing plant material, and that's ultimately going to contribute to that new nutrient cycling. That organic matter is going to continue to break down and supply vegetation for years to come through that natural process. So August 2018, we go back again. The heat of the summer, things are looking like they're going a little dormant. But again, dense stand of vegetation, even more biodiversity on our site. And ultimately, they are not going to be maintaining this site. So those pine trees may eventually move back into this area. And just a really cool case study that we have showing the capability of sustainably vegetating this site that couldn't establish any vegetation previously. So with that, the 5 fundamentals: eliminate your variability on your sites, get a feel for what you're dealing with, and come up with a plan of action ahead of time rather than trying to fix issues that could have been prevented pretty easily. So here's my contact information. If you have time, you can enter the information. You can give me a rating on the webinar, ultimately fill that out, and you'll be entered in to win a $50 gift card, actually. So the more feedback I get, the better I can hone in my presentation. So thanks for your time, and I'll pass it on over to Bill for any questions and answers. And I believe he wanted to go through a few more things.
Yeah, Matt. Well, listen, that was an excellent job. I'd be clapping for you here, but I think that and other people would be clapping too, but they're all muted and we can't hear them. I went back to your slide on purpose. So I want to leave that up there when I go to the Q&A. And some of these are some good friends of mine that I'll answer directly. Steve Polk in St. Louis is asking about why there's not more hydroseeding done in St. Louis. That might be a tough one to answer live here on a webinar, so we'll follow up with Steve for sure. But he did ask about a rule of thumb for the test spacing or the total area for soil testing at a development project.
Okay. So basically how many, tests per acre or something like that?
I like that question.
Yeah. And really it depends on, capabilities of amending your mix a lot of times. For linear transmission type projects that we work on, for instance, anytime there's extreme geographic variability. So if you're on the top of the hill and if you're in a very low spot, we're going to get 2 separate tests there and come up with a plan to treat both individually. For a housing type development, a lot of it's going to be the same. So depending on the acreage, I would typically recommend 2 tests just to see, if you see any extreme differences in your soil makeup, if one's very dark and one's very light, get those 2 tested for sure. If everything's pretty consistent looking, I would still get 2 and just compare them one versus the other to see if there really is no difference. But yeah, that is a really good question, and it is very dependent on your region and the type of project you're working on. But I would say, 1 to 2 tests typically for that type of housing development is sufficient. Thank
you for answering that. I'm kind of vetting these only because we're going to answer all of these in writing later, and we're going to get back to everybody. We'll send out the Q&As with some written answers, and some of these we'll just answer directly. One was someone was asking, well, a couple of guys are asking about other products. I'll deal with that as the distributor of biosol products, they're asking about biosol. Sorry about that. But of our profile products, they're asking if they're different than some of the other products they offer, and they are. And Matt knows this. We carry a lot of different solutions. Somebody said they don't have a vegetated option, they can't grow grass. Well, then we have some other options for them. So we'll run into that, and I'll deal with those directly. But one guy in particular is a friend of ours from Omaha, Michael Sharp, asked about what seed suppliers recommend with getting good soil contact, that's optimal rather than hydroseeding. But he's asking, because we know we can't always drill and broadcast seed with mechanical equipment necessarily. But what he's asking about is, is one method necessarily better than another? So if you're talking about hydroseeding or some of our blown products, how do we compare those to some of the other options to make sure we're getting good soil contact?
Yeah, and there are different preferences for different contractors. A lot of times, depending on the seed species is a big factor as well. So if you have very particular native vegetation that's extremely expensive, a lot of times they will do a drill type seeding when feasible there. And then cover it with the erosion control material. So whether it is a hydraulically applied erosion control material, rolled erosion control material, or anything in between, that's typically the solution they're going to go for. But we have had a lot of success, especially recently, just as this is pollinator species, native species are becoming more and more prevalent in our designs. We've had a lot of success even doing dormant seeding with hydraulically applied products and those type of plant species.
And one of the challenges we've seen when you're using innovative solutions is if somebody's tried something somewhere else, another time, a different solution, they kind of use a broad brush to paint their opinion of an entire category. And unfortunately, some people aren't leaving room for technology, innovation, improvements. So a lot of the things that didn't work in the past maybe come along and give somebody a bad impression. But if they give something a chance that's new and innovative, because companies like Profile Products and all of our engineered products suppliers are really investing a lot of time and money in constantly improving. So even products that they have that they've named that you're familiar with are constantly improving. So if somebody's asking why certain communities don't do hydroseeding as much or hydromulch, well, they just need to let us help them tell the story, and then we can even do some of these projects and show them case studies to really build their confidence. At ASP Quick Supply and Bowman, we say that we're the most trusted site solution specialists. It's because we are. We're not a big box store where you show up and you just buy something off the rack and we say good luck. We make sure that you understand how it works, so it's properly designed, properly installed, and properly maintained. So if we continue to get these specific questions, we'll share those with you, Matt. And if anybody wants to reach out to Matt Welch, his contact information is on the screen. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and move the slides. Matt, if you could chime in anytime you want, I'm going to go ahead and get into my closing slides because we're getting close to 1:30. Anything else you want to say about that, where you run into people that feel like they already have an opinion of certain products?
Yeah, and hydroseeding's been around since the 1950s, and it was designed initially to get even distribution of a variety of seeds on your site because it keeps it in homogeneous slurry. Real hydraulic erosion control products were not around until the early 2000s. So that's really typically when we started seeing these engineered products that are designed to withstand heavy rainfall events. And that's really the biggest differentiator. They see the green stuff sprayed on a slope, and it's all the same thing a lot of times.
That's what they think.
Yeah, exactly, when they're really very different. So making sure your specifications are very particular about, product composition, things like that will really set you up for success too.
I'm all about specifications, and that's part of what I do. So it helps on the design side to make sure they're getting the performance they expect, but it also helps defend the integrity of their project. We said all along, we want everybody to be successful. And if they put good specs in there, we'll make sure somebody's not, putting in a cheap alternative that looks the same when you drive by, but it's absolutely not the same. So we'll help you defend that spec all the way through to proper installation and maintenance. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so
much, everyone. Yeah, here's Bill then. Thank you.
So on our closing slide, it says Don Tiemann. I'm Bill Murphy, but Don's our VP, and he's the guy that gets things done quickly. He's the one that created this webinar series, and he joins us whenever he can, but he's super busy being the boss. I will say that Don has, and oops, Matt might have bumped that slide. Don has his contact information here, and so do I. I'm going to try to go back to one more slide here before this. I don't want to accuse you of doing that, Matt. I'll see if I can back it up to the last slide. We're getting close to the 1:30 mark, so I will end with what our next webinar is. There we go. There we go. So the Survey Monkey will be coming out. We took away the 5 technical questions that you have to answer. We weren't doing that at Lunch and Learns to make sure people were paying attention and not playing on Snapchat or Pokemon Go or whatever it is kids do these days. We were putting out for the first several webinars that we wanted everybody to answer 5 questions before we sent them their PDH certificate. And then we realized I was being more like a little league coach and kind of getting after everybody. But instead, we're just going to ask you to please fill out the Survey Monkey. It's going to be your name, your email address, your location, similar to what you've already provided. And then we're going to have 2 other columns. One's going to be projects that you want to talk about. There's never an obligation. We can help with design and budget costs. And the other one is going to be what can you do to help us? Like Matt said, click on his contact info and give him feedback. Give me feedback on this webinar and let us know what else you want to see. Contact me about any technical questions as well, about anything you hear us talk about. And then if I can get to that final slide, I'll just let you know we're doing another webinar next Wednesday, same time, 12:30 p.m. Central. That'll be with Flexamat. And then we're going to continue our series. We've got 3 others scheduled, and we might plug in some more. Even as we start to go back to work and everybody gets back on the road, we see a lot of value in these webinars, and they create opportunities for Lunch and Learns. So reach out to us and let us bring you food or send you food if we can't come in person. And we can do this directly with your office where you won't be muted. We'll all be live, and everybody can chime in. With that, I'm Bill Murphy with Quick Supply ASP at Bowman. Thanks for joining us. Matt, thanks a lot. Always appreciate you. You're an excellent presenter. Take care and have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Matt. Bye.